We're going to talk about behavior-driven design and user stories. To motivate this, we have to go back to the reasons that Agile was proposed as a methodology in the first place, which is that the sort of top-down plan and document methodologies had a terrible track record of failing. And one of the ways that Agile says that they should avoid failure is keep the stakeholders, the customers, continuously involved in the process. That way you are making sure sort of on an ongoing basis that the project does what the customer wants. And by the way, there could be many different so-called stakeholders. The customer, whoever you're building the software for, is a stakeholder, but the people who are going to use that software, the end users, are stakeholders. The programmers who are going to inherit and have to maintain that code afterward, they're stakeholders too. So let's keep the stakeholders involved to make sure that we're not going off the rails, if you'll pardon a terrible pun, in terms of what those stakeholders want. And one way to do that is to make sure that you always have a working prototype and you sort of incrementally deploy new features a little bit at a time. Maybe every iteration, which is a couple of weeks, typically, you would deploy one or two new features. And as soon as you deploy them, the customer gives you feedback, the other stakeholders give you feedback. So what you're really doing is reducing the amount of time that you're spending building stuff that you don't know if it's the right thing or not. Right. So remember, this is the validation versus verification. Validation is, are you building the thing the customer wants? So the way we do this in Agile Extreme Programming, which is the version we sort of favor in this course, is called behavior-driven design, which is very simple. It just means you're asking questions all the time. So both before, but also during development, about how the app should behave. And by having that conversation on an ongoing basis, especially with the customer, you are reducing the risk of miscommunication, where you think you understood what the customer wanted, but then when you build it, it turns out it's actually not what they wanted. And we capture the result of those discussions as user stories, which concentrate on the behavior of the app and not the implementation. Right? For most customers who are not technical, the implementation doesn't generally matter much to them. What matters is if the app does what they want, right? So that's why it's called behavior-driven design. Now, of course, as the developers, sooner or later, we actually do have to write the code. So in Module 8, we'll talk about test-driven development, which focuses more on specifying things about the implementation. But for now, let's talk about BDD. And really, BDD is all about stealing great ideas from the field of human-computer interaction. So at the very beginning of the course, we showed this diagram, a typical Agile iteration. And notice that the customer is always at the top of the iteration. So what we're doing in Module 7 is we're going to look at these pieces of the Agile iteration. We're going to talk about lo-fi UI mockups and how you use them to facilitate conversations with the customer, how you capture the results of some of those interactions through user stories and scenarios, and then how you convert those scenarios into runnable acceptance tests, which I think is just the coolest thing. And we'll also talk about, given that this is the way you're sort of dividing up your work, how do you keep track of how much work you've done and be able to estimate or predict how much you'll be able to get done in the future, because the customer is going to want to know which features are going to be delivered when. So what's a user story? A user story could not be simpler. It is a description in 2 or 3 sentences in everyday language. I would say a description in plain English, but obviously there's nothing specific to any spoken language about this. Small enough that it fits on an index card, and it's something that you and the customer essentially write together. And it describes one specific behavior of the app. So for example, for Rotten Potatoes, a really simple user story would be that a user can add a movie. As a movie fan, so that I can share my movie love with other users, I want to be able to add a movie to my database. And this is called the Connextra format. It's from the name of a now long defunct Agile software development company that sort of proposed, here's a template for how you capture a user story. You give the story a name. So in this case, it's add a movie, or, moviegoer can add a movie. And there's always 3 sort of clauses that have to occur in your description of the story. Who is the stakeholder? What is their sort of long-term goal? And what is the task described by this story that somehow contributes to that goal? So in this case, the stakeholder is a movie fan, so it's an end user. We said there are other kinds of stakeholders like the maintenance programmers, the people who run DevOps. So what's the goal in this case? The goal is I want to have a way to write reviews about my favorite movies that I can show my friends, which means I need to be able to add a movie. The 3 phrases can be in any order, but they should all be there. And the idea is to capture the business value, so-called, of a feature. And we'll have some detailed conversations about what business value means, sort of broadly defined. So why do we do it this way? Why do we do user stories in plain language, and why do we do them on these small cards? For one thing, plain language is non-threatening if your customer is a non-technical customer. And these days, most software customers are. They're not primarily programmers. So it's much less intimidating if you can have a conversation with them that doesn't involve requiring technical knowledge on their part. That means that everybody can participate in the brainstorming, not just the developers. Small cards are easy to rearrange. So that means that when it comes time to prioritize, in what order are these features going to be added, you can, with the customer in a sort of very nimble manner, just move the cards around on a table and indicate, okay, these are the higher priority stories. These we're going to leave for a little bit later. Keeping it short, meaning it fits on a card, requires you to make it specific to one behavior. So that means that if that specific behavior changes during development, if you need to change the description of what it's supposed to do, it's easier to do than if a story or a scenario is quite long. And by the way, the same behavior can mean different things to different stakeholders. So for example, imagine a feature that allows a moviegoer to see which of their friends are going to a show. In other words, you've now connected Rotten Potatoes to social media in some way. And when you buy tickets for a movie, you can optionally see which of your other social media friends have done that. From the point of view of the moviegoer stakeholder, the reason to do that is they want to enjoy the movie with their friends. And in order to do that, they want to be able to see which friends are actually going. But that very same functionality from the point of view of, let's say, the theater manager is very different. Because as the person who's selling the tickets, if they can essentially make it more appealing to you to buy a ticket by showing you which of your friends are going, that has a different kind of business value for them. So all of which is to say that there are many stakeholders. The same story from different stakeholders' point of view can have different business value, and that's fine. But the key is to keep them short and to keep a non-technical description that everybody involved, that all of the stakeholders can have a conversation about.